Work, from Past and Present by Thomas Carlyle. Part 1. Work as the law of reality. Work is not a punishment. Work is the first law of reality. Before theories, before systems, before governments and speeches, there was this fact: man must work or perish. The earth does not yield to wishes, it yields only to labor. No field ever gave harvest because a man desired it strongly enough. No stone ever shaped itself into a house because a man spoke about justice or rights. The universe answers only one language: work done. This is the great mistake of every age that falls into decay. It begins to imagine that words can replace deeds, that arrangements can replace effort, that mechanisms can replace discipline. But nature does not negotiate. She asks every man every day one simple question: what can you do today? Not what you intend, not what you deserve, not what you believe should be possible, but what you can actually do. Answer her rightly, and life opens. Answer her wrongly, and life closes. Without anger, without hatred, without explanation. Work is the interpreter between man and reality. Without it, reality remains silent. Men speak of freedom, but freedom without work is only disorder. Men speak of rights, but rights without work are only noise. Men speak of happiness, but happiness without work is an illusion that collapses at first contact with fact. To work is not merely to produce, it is to stand in alignment with the structure of the world. A man who works places himself inside the flow of reality. A man who avoids work places himself against it. That is why the idle man feels restless, bitter, and confused. He is not merely poor, he is out of place. Work gives weight to existence. It gives form to time. It draws a line between illusion and truth. A day filled with work has substance. A day without it dissolves into complaint, fantasy, and resentment. The modern error is to imagine that work exists for the sake of reward. In truth, reward exists for the sake of work. Work is not justified by wages alone. It is justified because it makes life real. A man who works, even in hardship, stands closer to truth than a man who consumes without producing, complains without building, judges without contributing. The world is not sustained by opinions, it is sustained by labor. Civilizations rise where work is honored. They decay where work is despised, outsourced, or masked behind abstractions. When a society begins to treat work as an inconvenience, as something to escape, as something to automate away without replacing it with discipline of the soul, that society has already begun to rot. For work is not only the movement of hands, it is the ordering of the inner man. To work is to submit the self to reality, to accept limits, to face resistance, to learn patience. And patience is the foundation of strength. This is why all enduring traditions, stoic, religious, heroic, place work at the center of character. Not because work is pleasant, but because it is true. Reality does not reward excuses. Reality does not respond to ideology. Reality responds only to effort applied over time. This is the first principle of work. It is not optional. You may delay it. You may disguise avoidance as sophistication. You may replace it temporarily with talk. But in the end, the account is settled. Work done stands. Everything else fades. Part 2. Work and justice. Work is inseparable from justice. Where work exists without justice, bitterness grows. Where justice is spoken of without work, emptiness follows. A fair day's wages for a fair day's work is not a slogan. It is a law older than all parliaments, older than all systems, older than all theories of economy. It is the everlasting right of man, and no civilization has ever violated it long without paying the price. Justice does not mean equality of outcome. Justice means correspondence between effort and reward. It means that what a man gives to the world is answered by what the world gives back to him. When this correspondence breaks, society enters a state of moral disorder. Men may still eat, still trade, still speak of progress, but inwardly, decay has begun. In every age of confusion, men attempt to deny this law. They speak of complexity, they speak of impossibility, they speak of systems so intricate that no clear relation between work and reward can be traced. But this is only language used to mask failure. Complexity does not cancel justice. Difficulty does not abolish obligation. The law remains, whether obeyed or denied. Never in the history of the earth, which everywhere yields corn if it is ploughed, and fruit if it is tended, did willing hands cry in vain for bread, until men themselves arranged things so. Nature does not forbid it, the world does not forbid it, only human disorder forbids it. Consider the simplest fact. There is not a horse, able and willing to work, that is left without food and shelter. The animal that labors is sustained. And yet the human being, who labors with mind and hand, is told that it is impossible. Impossible to feed him, impossible to clothe him, impossible to give him warmth enough to continue his work. The mind recoils from such a claim. It is not tragic, it is absurd. When a society reaches the point where it can maintain working animals but not working men, it has inverted its moral order. The question is no longer economic, it is spiritual. Such a society is declaring, without words, that labor has lost its dignity, that human effort no longer commands respect, that reality itself can be negotiated away. Men who repeat the word impossible in this matter do not understand what they are saying. If it is impossible to reward work with sustenance, then the society that claims this has already sentenced itself. For work is the only thing that keeps it alive. To deny work its due is to deny life its foundation. Justice delayed does not vanish, it accumulates. Every unpaid effort, every denied wage, every insult to labor becomes a weight stored within the structure of society. It does not disappear into statistics. It remains unseen until the strain becomes unbearable. And when the strain breaks, men call it crisis. They call it unrest. They call it instability. But it is only justice returning by another road. Work demands justice not as charity, not as generosity, but as necessity. A man may endure hardship, he may endure fatigue, he may endure long hours and heavy burdens, but he cannot endure the knowledge that his work is meaningless, unrecognized, or deliberately unrewarded. Take away justice from work, and you do not create peace, you create resentment, you create despair. You create a population that still moves, still produces, still survives, but no longer believes. And belief, once lost, is not easily restored. This is why justice in work is not a secondary concern. It is central. Break this bond, and nothing you build upon it will stand. Maintain it, even imperfectly, and society retains its spine. This is the second principle of work. Work must be answered by justice. Where it is not, no amount of order, no volume of law, no refinement of theory can save what follows. Part 3. The Lie of Impossible. In every age where work loses its dignity, one word rises above all others: impossible. It is spoken with authority, it is repeated with confidence, it is used to silence questions and to justify failure. But in matters of work and justice, this word is almost always a lie. Impossible is not a statement of fact. It is a confession of unwillingness. It means we do not know how, or we do not wish to try, or we do not wish to change. Nature itself never speaks this word. The earth does not refuse harvest to the plough. Fire does not refuse heat to fuel. Stone does not refuse form to the hand that shapes it. Only men speak of impossibility, and they speak it most loudly when they have abandoned responsibility. When men say that it is impossible to provide work, impossible to reward labor, impossible to align effort with sustenance, they are not describing reality. They are describing the limits of their own imagination, courage, or integrity. The laws of the universe have not changed, only the will to obey them has weakened. Look around. There is no lack of materials. There is no lack of hands. There is no lack of need. The fields still grow. The machines still turn. The knowledge still exists. What has diminished is not capacity, but resolve. The word impossible enters precisely at the moment when effort is required beyond habit. To accept impossibility in this matter is to accept collapse in advance. For if work cannot be honored, then nothing else can be. All systems depend on it, all structures rest upon it. Deny work its place, and every other institution becomes decoration, noise, and pretense. Men often mistake complexity for impossibility. They point to tangled arrangements, competing interests, inherited disorders, and say, the problem is too large. But size does not abolish obligation. Difficulty does not excuse abandonment. The greater the disorder, the more urgent the duty to confront it. History offers no example of a society that survived by declaring essential duties impossible. Survival has always belonged to those who acted despite difficulty, who endured adjustment, who accepted pain rather than denial. Every civilization that chose convenience over necessity eventually chose its own end. The word impossible is especially dangerous because it pretends to be rational. It wears the mask of realism. But true realism does not deny laws. It submits to them. To say that justice in work is impossible is to say that reality itself cannot function. And yet reality continues. It is only society that breaks. Those who repeat this word rarely accept its consequences. If it is truly impossible to sustain workers, then those workers must vanish. If they vanish, production vanishes. If production vanishes, order vanishes. The chain is simple. The end is unavoidable. To speak impossibility is to speak dissolution. This is why the refusal to accept impossibility is not optimism. It is sanity. It is alignment with the structure of existence. To reject this lie is to affirm that the world still obeys law, that effort still matters, that order can still be restored through discipline and courage. The men who built what endures did not ask whether their task was convenient. They asked whether it was necessary, and necessity has always carried its own command. This is the third principle of work. The word impossible has no authority over reality. It is spoken only by men who have stepped aside from their duty. Where work is concerned, what must be done will find a way, or sweep away those who refuse to do it. Part 4. Work versus Mammon. Where work is no longer honored, Mammon takes its place. Mammon is not merely money. It is the belief that money alone is reality, that payment replaces meaning, that calculation replaces conscience. When this belief settles into a society, work is no longer seen as a duty or a discipline, but as a transaction to be minimized, escaped, or manipulated. Mammon teaches men to ask first, not what must be done, but what does it pay? And when this question becomes supreme, the inner order of life collapses. For there are many things that must be done before they ever pay, and many things that pay which should never be done at all. Under Mammon, work is stripped of dignity. It becomes either drudgery to be avoided or leverage to be exploited. The worker is reduced to a cost. The employer is reduced to an optimizer. Both lose sight of reality because reality does not consist in numbers alone. It consists in sustained effort aligned with truth. Mammon promises efficiency, but delivers fragility. It builds systems that function only while conditions are perfect. The moment resistance appears, moral, social, or material, such systems crack. For they were not built on discipline, but on convenience. Work, when governed by Mammon, becomes hollow. Men still labor, but without inner assent. They move, but without meaning. They comply, but without belief. And this produces a peculiar exhaustion, not of the body, but of the soul. A man can endure heavy work if he knows it is real. He can endure long effort if he knows it serves something beyond appetite. But when work is performed solely to feed Mammon, it becomes unbearable even when light. For the soul revolts against serving what it knows to be false. Mammon also teaches contempt for limits. It whispers that growth must be infinite, that expansion must never pause, that accumulation itself is proof of virtue. But work teaches the opposite. Work teaches measure. It teaches resistance. It teaches that every gain exacts a cost, and that some costs are too high. Civilizations ruled by Mammon grow quickly and decay faster. They mistake motion for progress. They mistake consumption for life. They surround themselves with comfort while hollowing out character. And when the moment of strain arrives, they discover that comfort cannot carry weight. Work stands opposed to Mammon because work binds men to reality. It demands effort before reward. It demands patience before pleasure. It demands truth before appearance. Mammon reverses this order, and in doing so, dissolves it. A society that worships Mammon will speak endlessly of value while destroying it. It will praise productivity while despising producers. It will celebrate wealth while eroding the conditions that make wealth possible. And it will not understand its own failure, because Mammon blinds as surely as it feeds. This is why the conflict between work and Mammon is not economic, but moral. One is aligned with reality, the other is aligned with illusion. One builds slowly and endures, the other accelerates and collapses. This is the fourth principle of work. Work must rule Mammon, or Mammon will destroy work. Where money becomes master, labor becomes meaningless. Where labor retains its dignity, money resumes its proper place, a servant, not a god. Part 5. To work is to live. To work is not merely to survive, it is to live. A life without work may continue biologically, but it does not continue meaningfully. For meaning is not discovered in comfort, but forged in effort. Where effort disappears, life thins into habit, distraction, and decay. Work gives shape to existence. It anchors the mind. It disciplines desire. It orders time. Without it, days dissolve into indistinct repetition, and the man who lives them slowly loses his sense of direction. He may feel free, but it is the freedom of drift, not of purpose. The human being is not designed for idleness. When deprived of work, he does not rest, he rots. The faculties meant for action turn inward and become instruments of anxiety, resentment, and self-deception. Idleness is not peace. It is a slow violence against the self. To work is to participate in reality. It is to accept resistance and to answer it. Each task, however small, affirms the existence of order and the possibility of contribution. Through work, a man discovers that he is not merely a consumer of the world, but a maker within it. Even the hardest labor contains dignity when it is real. Even the simplest task can sustain the soul, if it is honest. What destroys men is not effort, but futility, the sense that one's actions leave no mark, serve no truth, build nothing that endures. This is why societies that remove work in the name of comfort produce despair instead of happiness. They mistake relief from effort for fulfillment. But fulfillment arises only where effort meets purpose. Remove purpose, and effort becomes torture. Remove effort, and purpose becomes fantasy. Work also teaches humility. It confronts man with limits of strength, of time, of knowledge. It reveals error and demands correction. In this way, work becomes instruction. It refines judgment, it tempers arrogance, it forces alignment with fact. A man who works learns to endure delay. He learns that results are not immediate, that progress is incremental, that mastery requires repetition. These lessons cannot be taught by speech alone. They must be lived, and once lived, they reshape character. Life without work seeks stimulation to replace meaning. It chases novelty, intensity, and distraction. But these only dull the hunger. They do not satisfy it. Work, by contrast, feeds the deeper need, the need to matter, to contribute, to stand in rightful relation to the world. To live is not to be entertained, it is to be engaged. Work is engagement with reality under constraint. It is the daily affirmation that existence is not arbitrary, that effort still counts, that order can be built from resistance. This is why work remains sacred, even when unrewarded, unseen, or unpraised. It sustains the worker before it ever sustains society. It preserves sanity where comfort cannot. It grounds the soul where pleasure fails. This is the fifth principle of work. To work is to live. Where work ends, life does not immediately cease, but it begins to hollow out. Where work endures, life retains weight, direction, and truth. Part 6. The moral dignity of labor. Labor possesses dignity not because it is pleasant, but because it is moral. It binds effort to consequence. It teaches responsibility. It places the individual in direct relation with truth. No other human activity does this so relentlessly, so honestly, and so without illusion. The dignity of labor does not depend on status. It does not arise from admiration, reward, or recognition. It arises from the fact that labor confronts reality and answers it. A man who labors accepts the terms of existence. He does not negotiate them away with words or abstractions. In labor, character is revealed. Discipline becomes visible. Integrity becomes measurable. Excuses lose power. Results remain. A man may deceive others for a time, but labor exposes him to himself. It reflects effort without flattery and failure without cruelty. This is why labor humbles. It teaches that desire alone is insufficient, that intention without action is nothing, that belief without effort carries no weight. It strips away vanity and forces alignment with fact. For this reason, labor is resisted by the proud and embraced by the serious. The modern world often seeks dignity through appearance, through titles, consumption, visibility, and acclaim. Labor offers none of these guarantees. It offers only reality. And yet, reality is the only foundation on which dignity can stand. When labor is despised, morality decays. Men begin to believe that worth can be claimed without effort, that entitlement can replace contribution, that speech can substitute for action. This belief spreads quietly and corrodes everything it touches. It produces arrogance without achievement and confidence without competence. A society that honors labor preserves moral clarity. It understands that contribution precedes reward, that authority must be earned, that leadership rests on proven capacity. Where labor is honored, merit can still be recognized. Where it is not, only noise remains. Labor also protects against resentment. A man who labors may struggle, but he does not stagnate. His effort gives him ground to stand on. His progress, however slow, affirms his agency. Without labor, frustration turns inward and becomes bitterness. With labor, struggle remains outward and becomes strength. To labor is to participate in justice. It affirms that the world responds to effort, that causality remains intact, that order is not a fiction. Even when reward is delayed or denied, labor sustains the worker by preserving self-respect. This is why no civilization can endure that teaches contempt for labor. Such contempt dissolves moral structure long before economic collapse becomes visible. Once labor loses honor, no law can restore order. This is the sixth principle of work. Labor is a moral act. It shapes character, grounds dignity, and preserves truth. Strip labor of honor, and society loses its spine. Preserve it, and even hardship remains bearable. Part 7. Final Stoic conclusion. Work does not promise happiness. It promises reality. And reality, once accepted, brings a deeper peace than happiness ever could. For happiness depends on circumstance, while work depends on will. One fluctuates, the other endures. A man who understands work no longer asks whether life is fair. He asks only what must be done. This shift marks the passage from complaint to responsibility, from illusion to maturity. The world does not owe meaning to the man. The man must carve meaning into the world. Work does not eliminate suffering, it gives suffering direction. Pain endured without purpose degrades. Pain endured in work transforms. Through work, hardship becomes discipline, resistance becomes instruction, and effort becomes identity. This is why the strongest men are rarely those most indulged. They are those most engaged. They have learned to carry weight without resentment, to endure delay without despair, to act without applause. Work has taught them to stand firm within uncertainty. The reward of work is not comfort, but clarity. A man who works knows where he stands. He knows what he has done. He knows what remains. This knowledge steadies him when words fail and promises collapse. In a world addicted to ease, work appears harsh. In a world afraid of effort, work appears cruel. But this is only because the alternatives are illusions that cannot bear weight. When illusion collapses, only work remains. To accept work is to accept limits. To accept limits is to accept reality. And to accept reality is the beginning of wisdom. No system can replace this. No ideology can bypass it. No shortcut can undo it. Work remains when faith falters. It remains when structures decay. It remains when explanations fail. It is the final anchor of meaning in a disordered world. This is why work is not merely economic, not merely social, not merely necessary. It is existential. It answers the question every age must face: how shall we live? The answer is never abstract. It is never spoken. It is done. This is the final principle of work. Do what must be done, not because it is easy, not because it is rewarded, not because it is seen, but because it is real. Work done stands, everything else passes.